3 shots, 4 par, I just do 2. 1 putt, par 4, birdie, woohoo. New driver, info, replace, M2, par 5, fairway, what you fin do? Think I'll try to get on into, start right, good line, good view, it drew, shooter McGavin.
We got Brandon Marino. Marino, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Man, you got the blue
Said it
check.
right.
You got the blue check on Instagram. Where do you get that from? I just noticed that.
Dude, that's a secret. I'll tell you off. No, I'm kidding. Dude, you just apply for it. You just have to like verify that you're legit and apply for it.
I'm gonna try, Bryce.
Pretty simple.
Get us that blue check.
Yeah, you should.
There's got to be a way to do it.
You'll get it. Oh, yeah, it's way easier than it should be, and I think that's just something people don't realize. Like it doesn't mean anything. It just basically says this person's who they say they are. And the only reason I did it is because if something happens and your account's compromised, it'll insure your account. They'll give it back to you.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It's already verified that it's yours. So for the sake of keeping your business safe long term, it's worth it. I mean, you pay for it now. It's like Twitter. It's like $15 or $10 a month or something. And it essentially just protects your account. It's just their way of grabbing a little more cheese and then offering you that insurance. But I think if you're running a business from your page, like a lot of guys like me who primarily social media, it's the business. I can't risk something happening and compromising that whole thing, you know?
That's a good idea. I'm going to check that out. So we do have a couple Instagram questions, but I'm going to go back to those ones. But Brandon, can you give us like a little intro? So you've been with us on the pod before. So if anybody remembers our episode, it was you and our friend Chris. So Custom Clubs, or Cousin Clubs now, as he likes to be called. Yeah. So that was a while back. Bryce was, I think you're in Florida at the time, or Orlando, Bryce. But we did an episode like you were doing club, like just club fitting, I believe, at the time, right?
Just building, just club building.
Yeah. So things have, that's right. So things have kind of changed. Can you give us an idea, kind of who you are, what's going on in your life now, man?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got back into building clubs. Some people know the story, but basically, I was a full-time metal fabricator for years. The pandemic, unfortunately, put a lot of people out of work, including myself. And at that time, there was kind of a transition in golf when things really started picking up. And the reason I initially had left golf back in the day was because it was dying. So for me, it was kind of a moment of, reflection in terms of like, okay, the reason I left isn't there anymore. So if this is something I was so passionate about before, why not at least dip my toes back in? So I just got a job at a local Roger Dunn, basically building clubs. And it was funny because I just had this thought, looked up openings. There happened to be one at the closest location to me. And I went in and the managers were just rad dudes. And I was like, at this age in my life, it's more important to be around cool people than it is to really have a job you love. Because if you have shitty people at work, like it takes all the fun out of it, no matter how fun the job is, no matter how, well it pays. So I still credit those guys to being a big reason why I got back into golf, because it was just a cool atmosphere. And it ended up being a great thing. I was straight with them and I told them I'm someone who's always wanted to work for myself and run my own shop, but this is a cool opportunity for us both to benefit from. And it ended up being just that, and when the time came for me to move on and actually go out on my own, they were super respectful and super supportive. And like, it could not have gone any better, to be honest. It's a funny point in my life where like over the last 2 years, everything has sort of kept happening the way that I thought it would. And after so many years of things not happening the way I thought it would, it created this like snowball effect of me embracing everything, which obviously makes everything even better, right? So I just got to a point where I was like, retail's just not for me anymore. I got to make this jump. I got to stop being afraid and just do it. Like I was telling you guys earlier, I mean, I had Chris making these rad resin divot tools, sending them to me, and my buddy Jordan at Dank Blank's making this crazy resin. And I'm like, first off, these tools need a ball marker to go with them, right? Absolutely. They have to have something with them because I'll show you some sets in a little bit. They just look super cool together. But then seeing the resin that my buddy makes, I was like, I got to do something with this too, because this stuff is so cool. And it's such a raw material, it comes in just blocks and you end up cutting it up to reveal the patterns. You get to pick which patterns you use. Like there's a lot of variables in there that I have control over. Yeah. So that kind of started this whole marker idea. And I was like, well, I'll make a couple prototypes. I mean, at that time, guys, like I made those on my desk in my office. I posted them online and people responded really well. So 3 days later, I was like, okay, well, it's the first of the year. So I'm just going to send it. Like, I'll make one marker every day for the entire month of January, and this will be my launch series. So they're all basically going to be, you know, secured at that point in time as like the first 31 I ever made. The first couple sold pretty quick, but I think a lot of that was because I just had people who supported me, who wanted to support me. So it was easy for me to not get too excited about it. But then all of a sudden, you know, I'm at day 13, 14, 15, and people are snatching these on Instagram within 30 seconds or a minute of me posting them. So I started to get really excited about it. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this could be something. I'll go to the end of the month. We'll see where I end up. And I'll make the decision then. And then sure enough, it got crazy. I mean, it got to a point where I'm getting so many messages about, can you make one for me? Can you do a custom one here and custom one there? And I stood firm. I was like, for this month, I'm doing 31. And then, you know, come February and March, I'll just blow it open and start really doing anything people want. And that's kind of how it went down. I got some shop space, bought a little more tooling. You know, I built myself an area where I could really refine the process. But those first 31 were made on my desk in this office right here where I'm sitting. I mean, I put a big moving blanket down so I didn't get dust or anything in the carpet. And I had this like cleanup procedure when I was done to, you know, really sweep all of it up and vacuum. Like, it was hilarious, dude. I'd pull out the vacuum and clean for like 25 minutes after I'd make markers for 6 hours with my girlfriend sitting in the chair behind me, you know, trying to work from home, and I'm running the drill and sanding. Dude, it was crazy. But I think anyone who starts their own business kind of has a story, an origin story. And this to me was, you know, a way to prove to myself that everything doesn't have to be ideal for it to work. You know, you don't need a full machine shop to start making cool stuff. You just have to have some talent and the drive to just say, screw it, let's take the risk, you know? And here I am, you know, 6 months later.
That's awesome, man. I love it. So metal fabricator, like as a background. So when you started it out, obviously the outside, or you're kind of putting inserts, and I know we're going to get to that a little bit, but have you ever, like, had you made any, Brandon, before? So we haven't said it to this point, but it's Nebula.golf, Nebula-golf.
Nebula-golf.com or Nebula_golf on Instagram. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So
someone bought the Nebula Golf domain years ago and they've been sitting on it, dude. I tried to get it. It's I don't know what it is, but
yeah, give it to the man.
Someone's holding it. Yeah.
So in case you have trouble finding it, if you're listening to us at this point, I'm going to link it in the show notes below. So you can go click it, check it out. It's like one of the most aesthetically pleasing Instagram golf pages that you'll ever look at. But my question was, and I want to get to some of the Instagram questions. We actually got a few. But if you, like, had you ever built one before, or that like 31, did you just decide, okay, like this is it, I like it?
No. Yeah, I never made a ball marker. I've made far more complex stuff. I mean, I was doing metal fabrication for a heavy civil contractor in their equipment yard, and I was kind of like the floating fabricator. So I had to just make whatever needed to be made. So, I mean, I would build jack carts that were used for jacking up 4,000-pound pipes into place in gas refineries. And then the next day I'm making a ladder to weld on the back of a, you know, flatbed truck. So it was always tons of random stuff. But I definitely had to build stuff to like really high standards, really low tolerances, to a point where I just learned a lot about refined fabrication. I had a couple side projects while I was there too, for some of the other guys I work with that were really, really intricate. And typically, you know, like with metal fabrication, I've always talked about how you usually go into something doing it for the first time completely blind if you don't have any prior experience with that type of fabrication. But you learn so much in that first time, and then if you get a chance to do it a couple more times, it's like, if you're really trying, it's really easy to hone your abilities. Because with metal, if you screw something up, you just weld more metal back and, you know, start over. If you sand something down too far, you know, you can throw a weld over it and try sanding it again. Like, there's a lot of opportunity for growth because there's so much that you can do to fix a problem versus, I mean, if you're woodworking and you cut something wrong, like, it's game over, go find another piece of wood. You know what I mean? So it's like you have a little more freedom to mess around and try stuff because there's so much opportunity to fix it. So I think it just gave me, you know, I describe it as like, I have a lot of tricks in my pockets now. And as I started making more complex markers, I started realizing that I'm like pulling from that pocket, like little things I learned along the way that sort of show up when it comes to making markers, whether it's, knowing how to hand file something straight so I can do really cool bevels on a hexagon, or knowing like, just little tricks for changing the shape of something or different finishes I've applied to previous metals. So it just gave me a lot of like knowledge to fall back on. So making the markers wasn't really the hard part. I think the hard part was finding how to do it to my standards. Because I mean, I look back at the first 31 I made compared to what I'm making now, and I'm like, shit, man, that's not the best. It's come so far, but that's how it is. And there's a lot of people who have some of those first 31 that are stoked that they're not perfect because
right.
It's like, it's one of the initial runs,
Well, and there's something to that too. Sorry, Bryce. So there is something to that, right? Like when you're kind of fabricating new pieces and you're creating new pieces to like see that growth. Like I cringe when I look back at some of our old episodes, Bryce. I'm sure you do too. Like when you see them pop up, you're just like, oh my God, they're so bad. And now we're like just so good at just talking to people. Like we're so good about talking to golf, like about golf or literally like anything random. Like now it's kind of just is like second nature to us. And it's kind of fun to see that growth, and that's what's so infectious. Like this is episode, I think we're in the 150s here now, so like it's infectious, man. And it just kind of like Brycer sends me a message and says like, what are we doing this week? And same thing, we're doing it this week, we're doing it this time, we got this person, we're doing it, here's their page, and it's just kind of like we're excited to chat about it, right? So that growth is like really cool. But people have been here since the start. Like, thank you for tolerating us at the start. And I'm sure you're thinking the same thing. But it's like, I know if like you have one of those original pieces, and like I was talking about our friend Tyler Lowy. So like I got one of, his first 50 putters coming, and it'll be in the mail shortly. And like I'm sure there's going to be a day where that guy is like building the most incredible putters on the planet. He already is, but I'm sure there's going to be a day where like you cannot literally get your hands on a Lowy putter, and I'm going to be very happy
or
that
you'll
I've got one,
see him in retailers, and they'll have a run of Lowies.
Well, I was going to say,
you never know what'll happen.
It's like everything. I mean, you're probably going to make 1,000 more, and then you're going to look back at these ones you're doing now and be like, wow, those aren't as good as they are now. Like it's just the practice makes perfect. It's a day old saying that'll just last forever because it's true. I mean, it's just the more you do it, the better you get.
Yeah, and while I think we can sort of reach a finish level, like, if you have a podcast where you're like, that really felt refined, it felt like it flowed, everything went really well, you'll still find ways to make it more efficient 100%. In the long run. And I think that's where I'm starting to really stretch my legs is like I've made some, like every now and then I have a marker that comes out like borderline flawless. They're to my standards like absolutely perfect. But it's about getting those done in a reasonable amount of time. I know that like with that first run of markers, there were some that took me 5-6 hours to make. And now those same designs might take me 3.5-4 hours. So that's where I can really start like honing everything. Just like anyone else, whether you're crafting something or creating a visual art or a media art. I think getting proficient at it, right, is what we all kind of keep striving to do.
100%.
Of course. I'm like fascinated with these shows too. Like you see them come on Netflix and they're just like different making shows, right? So like, and it's called, what was the one, but there's like a glass blowing one, and then there's like something.
Oh yeah. Maker. It's called like Blown Away on Netflix.
Blown Away.
I was, those, and you're dealing with artists, right? So they're kind of quirky, but you can't turn it off because you're like, they're taking glass tubes and turning them into these, beautiful sculptures. It's crazy
stuff too, man. And there's another one called like The Making of a Maker or something. I don't know what it is, but it's something along those lines. And like they're just building the most random stuff, and like they'll have different type of fabricators on there, and they'll have woodworkers and things like that. And it's just like, it's truly incredible to see like what different people can come up with, and like, having the idea of like, I just looked at Dank Blank's page, also another very aesthetically pleasing Instagram page. Go check out that one for sure.
Absolutely. You get lost, dude. This is just me looking for inspiration, dude,
I was
for,
just
25 minutes.
Firing through those reels, man. It is really cool. But I don't know. It's just like unbelievable to kind of like look at that. You might think of like that piece of resin. Like I know Chris did the same thing. Like he sent me a photo the other day. I was getting another tool from him. He sent me a photo the other day and said like, which one do you want? And I was like, I don't know, man. Like they all look so awesome. Like
all of them.
How do I choose one? Like give me one of each and just like take my MasterCard, I guess. I don't know. But We did get that question, Brandon. So how do you, without giving away too many details, how do you like insert the resin into the copper, the steel, whatever it is that you're working with?
So a lot of people, I mean, there's obviously some videos showing kind of the process on Instagram. I know a lot of people really like process videos nowadays. There's definitely certain makers and creators who are kind of afraid to show the process because they think someone's going to rip them. I've really never been that type of person. A lot of people thought that I was somehow pouring the resin in the markers as like a mold, but I'm slicing those blocks up into scales and essentially have just found a really good way of marking the inside circle of the ring that I make. So I take those rings, like copper, brass, stainless, and I essentially clean them up till they're a perfect circle. I started by just drilling the holes out of solid pieces of material that I shaped, but it got to a point where I was like, I can get this laser cut. So I get the rings laser cut now. But there's still some finish, you know, like I could, you know, show you guys, and you'll see some on my Instagram of what the rings look like raw. I mean, it's just like a laser cut piece of steel. It's pretty plain Jane. So I take those and I basically finish them out to where I'm happy with them, aside from the final polish. So the inside of the ring is a perfect circle. The outside of the ring is a perfect circle. And it's literally as simple as taking these like scales that I cut out of the block, picking a spot, you know, because you have this piece of resin that big, and I'm moving the ring around trying to find the best use of space. You know, I don't want something that doesn't look right. You know, the golden ratio, the rule of thirds, whatever you want to call it. Like I try to picture that a lot when I'm placing the marker on the resin block. So I have like a really even distribution of textures and colors throughout the entire insert. And I mean, I literally just trace it with a Sharpie, which gives me like a rough estimate on the inside. Then I come back through with a really, really, really fine pick, and I just scratch the resin over the Sharpie. So it leaves me a nice clean line. And because the pick has such a fine like needle tip, I'm basically now taking that marking and just sanding it down to where that line is, roughing it all up by hand. Basically just lightly sanding it all the way around until it fits perfect on the inside. And then, I mean, it's at that point a matter of sanding both sides flush to where they fit up to the marker on both sides really clean, and just glue it in.
What kind of glue?
I use
I don't know if you want to answer that, but
yeah, no, it's called G2 or G-Flex. I think it's G-Flex. But it's just like a permanent industrial adhesive. It's made to bond to anything. Nice. I definitely have refined that process significantly. I think most of the markers, if not all the markers I've made in the last couple months, are pretty much glued for life. Yeah. I know there was a trial and error process with what adhesives are best.
Did you try a bunch of them?
Yeah. I mean, I've probably 4, 5, 6 different epoxies, and I'd throw a marker in my bag, and every time I'd play golf, I'd try to push the insert out. And early on, they sometimes would pop out, and like I've told everyone, you know, there was a trial and error process. They come apart, send them back to me, I'll re-glue them with the new adhesive, and I've done that with a few of them. I mean, nothing's perfect. Yeah. But now I think I've got it to where it's pretty much set in stone at that point. Unless you're really abusing it, there will always be the temperature change problem. If you're going from really, really, really cold to really, really, really hot, you have 2 different materials that expand and contract at different rates. I mean, SpaceX deals with those problems. Like, it's something you can't avoid. There's very few ways to offset that sort of issue. It's the same reason the submarine exploded. You know, I mean, it's like you have carbon fiber and stainless steel or titanium, whatever they used, and then when they're expanding and contracting at different rates, it's going to create a failure point. Same reason golf club heads fly off. Like, that's going to be a problem that'll continue to happen forever, because you have a club that's designed to be taken apart to repair, but also designed to stay together. So, you know, at what point is there that point of failure? It's just going to happen every now and then.
Well, and when we're talking about a ball marker, like we kind of talked about, like, you know, you get like a luxury item, like a watch or something, like you said earlier. Like, you're not trying to like find a weak point in that. You put it on, you enjoy it, like put it in your valuables pouch, whatever it is that you got, and put it in your pocket, drop it down on a soft green or whatever it is, and mark the ball, right? We shouldn't really be, I guess we're all kind of like fidgeting with things like that at times, but
that's part of it. I mean, I've caught myself doing it too sometimes, where even if you're just like rubbing it like a worry stone, like, that could put some pressure on it. But I mean, it's like I said, it's once in a blue moon. So when it happens, I will more than gladly email someone a free shipping label, have it sent back. I'll totally, I'll repolish it at the same time, put it back together, send it out. Like it's no big deal. I'll stand behind that all day long, but it's going to happen.
So are you the only one, Brandon, doing the resin insert? Do you know?
I think so. I've definitely seen people in the past do putters with, whether it be a resin or a Fordite or some sort of exotic material inlaid. So there's guys like dancing astronauts that will put inlays in the back cavity of their putters, and they look really bitchin'. They at one point had made some markers.
Yeah, Mac made. Yeah, he does that too. He's so good at that, man.
And I've definitely seen markers with inlays before. But everyone doing it is doing it with CNC machining, which, I mean, as soon as you understand the parameters of your machine, you're at that point a computer programmer. It's not the same. I've stood behind the fact that my markers are sort of an expression of my capabilities. Like these were some of the most complex ones I ever made, where I'm creating a hexagon out of the metal material, and then in addition creating a hexagon out of the resin. So what do we have here? We have 24 angles and 24 sides that all have to be uniform with each other at the same time. You could rip this on a CNC in a couple of hours, so it's more about me proving to myself that I can do it without that, and then at the same time I'm lucky enough people appreciate handmade stuff. I mean, that's trending now.
Yeah. Do you think that that's something that makes like your markers so attractive, or more attractive than many others? Yeah,
100%.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think like, I don't have a handmade wallet right now, but I came across a guy recently on Instagram that makes some really, really bitchin' handmade wallets for about the same price as you'd pay for a designer wallet, like a Coach wallet, or just a nice quality leather wallet.
Right.
They're handmade, and I'm attracted to that because I make stuff by hand. Coincidentally, there's people who don't make anything by hand that are still attracted to it. I think it's knowing that someone put a piece of their soul into something. I don't think you see that with anything machine made. I know there's a lot of passion behind the design, and there is something to be said about the time, energy, and talent it takes to design something on CAD and understand your equipment enough to at least produce what you designed, if not something even better. But I think there's something left out of stuff like that, Yeah.
I think there's just more care involved. I mean, it's like you do a CNC machine, in theory it should be almost perfect every time, so you just grab it and go. You don't really look over it and make sure it's all perfect. I feel like when you're doing it by hand and it's right in front of you, you kind of make sure it's perfect because you know it, like it won't, like there's a chance it's not going to be, you know what I mean? But
have you ever made two of the same?
So I've made matching sets, where someone might be like, we're going on a golf outing, I need 6 of them, and I want them all to have the same resin. But the thing about his resin is I will never, ever have 2 patterns on an inlay that are exactly the same. Right, so they might be cut from the same block where they're the same color scheme, but there's no 2 out there that are identical.
That's so cool.
It's impossible.
Yeah. I love that, because just like
that's definitely something that's attractive.
Yeah, the pouring process in itself will never allow 2 of those to look exactly the same. And I love that. And that's why, like, when we talked about Lowy, like, that's why I was so attracted to the idea of going and talking to him about building a putter. And then shit, man, we were on the phone, like I was saying, for 2 hours. And it was just like hearing somebody like genuinely, like, probably more excited than I was, even though I'm like absolutely thrilled to be getting one and happy to be on the list. It was really cool to kind of see that, and you have that same kind of passion. It's neat, man. How many can you tell us how many you're pumping out like a day or a week right now? Because I remember being absolutely blown away when you told me that you were reshafting 200 clubs per week, and I was just like mind blown at that time. Per month. Yeah, per week would be like insane.
The markers definitely take over in terms of determining the time frame for anything. I can't rush stuff like this. I've realized that rushing it creates problems. It also tends to create something subpar. So I've had to kind of fight within myself when it comes to just trying to hammer stuff out all the time, because I might want in the morning to go into the shop and work for 12 hours and bang out 4, 5, 6 markers, but you start to realize that with anything refined or anything that also takes creativity, you're going to burn out fast.
Brain gets tired.
So I try to stick to 2 or 3 a day unless I'm doing a set. You know, if I'm making 6 matching markers, that's when it's like, okay, it's pretty rinse and repeat. If I stamp the same thing 6 times, by the 6th one, I'm kind of just listening to a podcast and just hitting the hammer.
Yeah.
But I'd say on average 2 a day, you know, because they take between 2.5 and 3.5 hours. And then obviously there's time sitting around on my phone, talking to my buddies at work, whatever it might be. So 2 a day is a good day.
That's a good day, man. I like that. And there's, you know, so there's only so many in existence. Do you like, where do you want to see this go, Brandon? Like, do you want it to, you're not kind of doing it full time just yet, but is that sort of the dream? Is that where we want to take it?
So I actually have been doing this full time for about a month, just because I wanted to take a break from building clubs.
I love that, man.
For a while, it was kind of split.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I had a waiting list. I had a big order, and then behind that, I had a waiting list of about a dozen markers. So I was just like, it's at least enough to burn, you know, a month doing that. So I've literally been hammering them out 6 days a week for the last 30 days. And if I don't have anything on order, I'm lucky enough to where I can make a drop of 5 markers, like my last titanium run, and just post them, and there they go. Like it, you know, the free time that's there when I'm not working on customs. Yeah, it's just,
man, that's so cool. I love hearing stuff like that.
It's still going stupid quick.
Yeah.
Like within minutes.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, like the last drop I did, I made 5 titanium ones. The 5th one was probably my favorite. That's the one that didn't sell, but I had someone else who wanted to order a titanium one anyway, and I sent him a picture of it. He's like, oh no, I'll just take that one. Nice. But the first 4 went, I mean, a couple of them within a couple minutes, but all a little bit less than an hour, which totally fine with that. You know, I post at weird times too. It's like 5 o'clock on a Saturday. A lot of people are doing shit. You know, I don't expect people to be sitting in front of their phone, but whoever has post notifications on or is hovering the page, like I try to post drop teasers on my story so people have a general idea of when they're coming. But it's sometimes it's a gunfight sometimes, man. It's hilarious. It's just people get bummed, and you know, if someone reaches out to me and says they really, really wanted one, I'll put you on the list. I'll make you one. Like, it's no big deal. You know, when I do those drops, it's more or less marketing for me. It's not like I'm never going to make this design ever again. You know, it's just get some stuff out there.
It's such a niche market, man. It's almost like, I don't know. It's a pretty creative little corner here. Yeah. I like it. I'm going to grab a question if you don't mind. We got a good buddy of the pod, Jake Morrow. So I don't know if you know Jake.
I don't think I know Jake.
Yeah, so Jake's a club builder, club fitter. He was on a few weeks back, and he's kind of taken, I don't know, Bryce, you would explain it better than me, but he's sort of doing like the idea of club building, club fitting and stuff like that. And he's just making it like an educational series for a lot of listeners that, or a lot of golfers, sorry, that, you know, might not have that education or experience.
So cool. Essentially so for the people who don't want to go get fit or don't want the experience or can't afford the experience, he's essentially making club fitting accessible to everyone with putting information about line angle, loft, attack angle, all this stuff, and explaining it to a certain extent to where the normal golfer, the golfer who's not in the industry and knows about that can learn about it and learn how it works, essentially is what he's doing, which is really cool.
Super that's awesome.
Yeah. Really talented.
And there's a void really for that. I think
for sure, big time.
The golf business is full of a lot of gatekeepers. It's unfortunate. I think it's very dog eat dog when it comes to being a fitter or a teacher or a builder. The only way to stand out is to do basically really work for exclusive clients that appreciate you. I mean, I have a fairly short list of people who only come to me. And those are the people who I still do builds for. But if you're just working in an environment where it's more sales than fitting and more sales than building, I think a lot of people feel threatened by sharing information they see may have gained some success for them, which is unfortunate. I mean, it's like people all the time are like, aren't you afraid someone's going to rip you off on this marker design? I'm like, no, absolutely not, because they'll do this for 3 months and realize it's a pain in the ass and they'll quit. Like I don't know. I wouldn't have been motivated to do this 3 years ago. I would have gave up. So I just happened to be at the time and the place that allowed everything to happen the way it's happened. But I mean, shit, if someone knocks me off, I can pull them off as well as I can.
Good for them.
Go after it, dude. Like I'll hope my clients are more loyal, but
Well, I was gonna say
whatever.
something like your markers too is not something easily that someone can just go do. Like, it's a lot of skill and a lot of knowledge behind those.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do it, but they would just look shitty.
Well, combined with like your metal fabrication background, it's a pretty unique corner. It's a
knowledge
it's a pretty small niche market that there's probably not too many people who'd be able to do it and get it done in the time frame that you can do it. And so I think that's why Bryce and I love having conversations with people like yourself who have this like special skill set that very few people have, right? So, and that's kind of how these pods become so interesting. And like I was telling you, like the Lowy pod that we had, again, like smaller market, but one of our most downloaded pods we've ever had. Like it was just like right away, it was like everybody was very interested in hearing his story, which was really cool. All right, Jake says 14 clubs, ball not included, one brand. What you picking?
Like dream set?
I guess, yeah. If you can only have 14 clubs, ball not included, but it's got to be one brand.
Yeah.
One brand?
Yeah.
One brand.
Well, I mean, that eliminates Mira.
Yeah, that's exactly what I just thought. Yeah, that's what I
have a set of Miras that a friend of mine actually very generously hooked me up with. I got a great deal on them, and he's put me into my dream set of irons. So those are coming soon, but MB101s. But I mean, Mira doesn't make metal wood, so there goes the Mira argument. I mean, to be completely honest, it would probably be Nike. I worked for them for a long time. My irons are still Nikes now. I think they probably did the best job of making well-rounded product for lower handicaps at the time. Titleist was great. That was back during like it was like the 907 series, the D2s, 910s. Those were all amazing drivers. They were still producing great irons. But there was just something about Nike to me that was not so traditional like Titleist. So there were a couple generations of Nike product that had some serious engineering behind them that showed up and worked, like the covert drivers with the cavity. I mean, by the time they got to Vapor, that cavity was super, super effective. And while now we have drivers, like I still play my Rogue ST where you can hit them off the toe and the heel and the ball goes straight. Nike was doing that 10 years ago with that cavity back, but there was this taboo over the brand that stopped a lot of people from getting exposed to it, whether it was scandal or because their branding was sort of geared towards a younger generation of people, the ones that don't have the money to spend in golf, which I think was a big problem of theirs. I still think they were really kind of ahead of the curve in a dying industry. I know when Nike stepped out of the game, they were actually trying to buy Callaway, but there was just something about that deal that didn't work out and it fell through. So I would say, I mean, they had the method milled putters, which were stunning.
I
Rory
still
used
have
one for years.
I can't get rid of it.
That poly groove technology worked extremely well for getting the ball rolling forward. Their wedges, which, I mean, now Artisan Golf obviously shows you that design never failed. Their wedges are stunning. All the original VR Pros and VR Forged were just amazing wedges. They were soft. They had a lot of bounce options. They were really traditional shape. They weren't too round. They were still kind of sharp on the leading edge, which at the time no one was really doing. Their irons, I mean, the Tiger Woods irons or the VR Pros at the time had less offset, a thinner top line, and a thinner sole with less bounce than any iron available to the public. So they had the thinnest blades on the market right next to, I think it was the MP67s or the 69s. And then the covert stuff in the woods. I mean, really one of the first successful adjustable drivers with the Flex Loft, where you could go from 8.5 to 12.5 on the same head, which a lot of people don't realize not only made finding the right driver for you easier because you weren't so focused on what inventory was available, but for retailers and fitters and professionals and anyone on the sales side, it completely changed everything, because now you're buying 1/3 or 1/4 of the amount of heads that you'd normally buy, and you could just adjust them to the loft on the fly for the customer. I mean, it was crazy, the stuff they were doing. But, they had a changing of the guard, and the guy who ran Nike for the 10 years that they were around retired, and they brought in some people that felt it was time to crunch numbers and cut their losses. It's just the sad story of the demise of Nike Golf. I mean, I think nowadays their shoes are pretty shit compared to what they used to be. I mean, the apparel, there's not as much cool stuff as there was in the past. There's not as much color as there was in the past. It's just, they're kind of lingering, you know?
Well, now all of us collectors are trying to find the VR Pros or the Vaporflies and stuff like that. When you get your hands on a set, especially a set of lefties for me, we're doing our best, right? So they're kind of like.
I still kept my bag. I have a full. Let me grab it. One quick second. You'll like this.
It's Bryce. I don't think either of us expected that question, that answer in that much detail, man. Nike
no, that was awesome.
Like Nike is so good, man. It's just like their stuff, and like the putters. Obviously, people are still rolling them, right? So you got the VR Pros.
So I have my gamer bag from back in the day.
Love that.
And I basically kept it all original. So I have the VR Pro wedges, which this was like one of the first little like restos I did, that oil can with the gold. I have my irons, the VR Pros. And then these are like some of the best clubs I think they ever made, but the VR Pro limited edition with the bonded hosel. I mean, the feel off of a forged face with a bonded hosel is like, it's just bonkers compared to all these new drivers. Matching fairway wood VR limited. So to me, this stuff is so timeless, and it's traditional enough, but techie enough.
Yeah.
To where it still works.
It's got to be good, man.
I still got this.
Oh yeah.
I still got this guy floating around.
Yeah, dude. I mean that is and those are so desired now, because I've been trying to replace the method that I unfortunately let go years ago, and it's been impossible.
Yeah, I had a set of TW, well, not like the Victory Red Blades, but the TW ones, like kind of like the.
Yeah.
I had them. I was hitting them. My buddy had them and asked me if I wanted them, and I was like, no, I don't think so. And now, like every day, I regret, not every day, but I regret not buying them.
Oh, when we're having conversations,
well, those were brutal.
Yeah.
Those are as knifey as anything gets, man. I played VR Pros, and the Tiger Woods to me felt like another echelon of performance was necessary. It was bizarre.
Yeah, Brycer has that
okay, but I mean,
yeah, you have that performance sometimes, or most of the time, especially now. Like the game's good, but man, like
I shot 78 with them, and I never hit them before. So
obviously, like Scheffler was hitting that 3-wood.
Not too bad.
Scheffler was hitting that 3-wood into 2022, I think, right? So like, it's people like it. Yeah. People are still hitting it. Or
Finau and Brooks still use the 2-iron.
Yep. So. Yeah. The
and a lot of people also don't realize that Nike. I mean, I don't want to say invented, but they definitely were the first people to start building driving irons. I mean, they were taking those Vapor Speeds, or like originally the VRS Covert Forged, which was a giant cavity forged club, and they were stuffing graphite shafts in them, and it was the first driving iron. I mean, I still to this day, I play this, which it's not the Pro like Kepka, but I mean, it's arguably the same thing. So this was actually a 3-iron built by the Oven that I had a really cool ass client who traded me for some work. So it still has the original shaft that they put in it, very era specific.
Yeah. You
can buy these for $90 on eBay, and they'll outperform almost any $250 hybrid shaft nowadays. It's ridiculous. And they were just stuffing it in these giant soled, basically game improvement irons.
Yeah.
And I mean, you see Brooks, it's like, here we are 10 years later, and there's guys who are like, I'm not taking that club out of the bag.
Well, that's like the ZU65 that I've got. Like, it's so hard to get rid of that thing, man.
Yeah.
Like, I've tried to hit like the U500, the U505s, like a few different things. I had a Apex Pro or something in there for a bit that I tried. I was like, well, this is like newer technology, and like I just go back to that thing every time. And it's like, I got that fatter sole. It's just like minimal offset. And when you hit it right, you just hit it really well. Like it's just a beautiful
and this was also, before the whole low spin thing kind of took over. I think any modern day club fitter or builder will tell you that we've sort of transitioned from a point where we used to fit woods to try to lower spin to now we're actually at a point where I know with like Paradigm and Stealth 2 that they're now changing shafts out during fittings to add spin because they're just not spinning the ball enough. And I saw the same issues with driving irons. I mean, I have built so many driving irons for people that they didn't like because it is just so hard to find one that goes high enough and spins enough to hold the dang green. Unless you have 115 mile an hour clubhead speed, like, that driving iron goes 265, but it's hitting the green and jumping 15 yards off the back. It's a useless club, unless you want to drive with it. But drivers are so forgiving now that what's the point of a driving iron when you can spam the face on a driver and still hit a fairway?
Yeah, and 290 or 280 or whatever, right? But
Yeah.
I wish.
but just to get back into your markers a bit, do you have a specific marker that you like remember exactly how you built it and it's just kind of like, wow, that was my one that I like the most, or are they kind of
So it's
all like
funny.
that?
It's the one I have in my bag. So I did this, like, see if I can get it to focus.
Yeah.
This was the inverted hex series, which was sort of supposed to be inspired by that hexagon on the pole of Saturn. So I made a couple of these with like a swirl pattern in the middle, to look like that cloud. But these were so hard to make that I ended up pricing my customers out of all of them, so they didn't sell. So this one, ironically enough, when I made it, I was like, this is probably the coolest marker I've ever made. I mean, it's really hard to see the detail on it, but it's like, see if I can get it. The edges are all hand beveled, so you can see the bevels on the corners. Like, it's extremely detailed. And then that spiral on the middle, it took me probably 6 or 7 tries of resanding it and trying to re-spiral it just to get that spiral look.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time I was done with it, I'm like, man, this is probably the coolest one I've ever made. And then no one bought it. So
Yeah.
I'm like, this is meant to be. It's got to go in my bag. Like, why would I, And then of course Chris ends up sending me a matching tool with the same resin. So I'm like, okay,
Oh, nice.
this is
That's sweet.
this is exactly what was supposed to happen.
That's so nice, man. I got a tool like that looks pretty similar from Chris. It's so good, man.
What do you
it could be the same bottle.
What do you typically charge for a marker, just in case, just so people know?
So I have a couple options. What I started doing recently was I started making these guys, which I call like launch buttons, which, I was just trying to keep the space theme. They look like buttons. So maybe they'd be like, the launch button on a spaceship or something. So I do these for 40. I don't offer these designs as custom because I make them in batches. So that was kind of a way for me to allow people who really liked the product but weren't necessarily financially, in a position to spend $150, $200 on a marker. But then the same round stamped ones you guys see on my page a lot, I typically run those for like 150 on a brass, 155 on copper, 160 on stainless, 175 on titanium. So it's just sort of price based on the cost and the material involved. And then when you start getting into some of the more complex designs, like some people want exotic materials inlaid, there's more upcharges with that. If you want a certain finish, that might be a lot harder for me to. Pretty much everything right now is between 150 and 200. Okay. And then, details there are just kind of case by case. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and before we let you go, Brandon, I know we're running a little bit late here. We got another one we're doing tonight, but man, you made one for Michael Block.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Can you tell us that story? Like that was right around the PGA, I guess, right?
Yeah, so he's a local guy. I've known Block for a little bit. He was actually getting work done at the shop that I got hired at. So I was introduced to him by the managers there because he just was coming there for his work because it's 2 blocks away from Arroyo Trabuco, his home course. We kind of connected right away because he has some mutual friends in the desert that I knew. And as he got to know me, he started trusting me with more and more work. And there's a couple clubs in that bag during the PGA that had some cool BB&F Co. ferrules on there. And those were wedges he came to me and had me rebuild about 2-3 weeks before. Nice. I was trusted by him to touch his clubs. It's someone who is such a feel player like he is. It was like definitely a flattering experience for me just to get to work on his clubs and have him, have some faith in me there. And I had already planned on making him a cool marker regardless of his finish because I just wanted to, commemorate the fact that he made it there in that whole journey. And then I had a customer reach out for a commission piece for him, who is also a friend of his. And as the days went on, we started realizing this is becoming more memorable. So we knew on Thursday that I was going to be stamping his 4 scores on that marker. And we found out Sunday, those 4 scores were all going to be, 70s and 71s. Like it was crazy. So, getting to make that for him and then him having a genuine friend of his deliver it and then him finding out that I made it, like it was just such a cool experience just to be able to make something that has some weight behind it. I've always talked about how when people come to me, whether it's like I've made anniversary gifts for people or markers that commemorate a golf outing that these guys might only go on once every couple years. Those are fun to me because I know that they carry a memory with them and not just an aesthetic thing. So that was definitely one of the cooler ones I've made.
Yeah, I think so. And like, it was when I saw you posted, it was kind of right around that time, and like it was the most electric thing in the golf world this year, probably, right? And then like,
probably
you see him afterwards. He's up here at Glen Abbey, which is like a historic course with that had the Canadian Open. He was doing like a hole-in-one challenge and stuff up here, and he was golfing with DJ Khaled, and like, it was just a really, really cool thing, right? So when I saw that you made that, I figured we just kind of had to get a bit of that story, and it was obviously even deeper than we expected. Having a couple of the ferrules on the clubs is pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that club he hit off the cart path, that wedge, like there's a couple in there, and it was pretty cool.
That's sweet, man. Brandon, I really appreciate this, man. This was a really cool story. It was definitely, you obviously know a ton about clubs, and it was kind of cool that Bryce and I were saying as you were grabbing your bag, we didn't expect that answer. Like, it was so in depth, but people don't really remember Nike like that. So I think it'd be pretty cool to get a set of blades in the bag and some of those old coverts and stuff like that. A nice method putter, maybe one of the half moons or something for me. But yeah, it was cool, man. I really appreciate this one. This was a lot of fun.
I got something for you guys, though. Yeah. I can't let you go just yet. So let me grab my phone right here.
All right.
So I made you guys a couple markers. I had to do it. Oh. I wanted it to be a surprise. So let me get some light in here.
Damn, those are sweet.
So I got stainless
look
and
at
brass.
those.
So I got that one, and then we got this one right here.
Those
so
are
I'll let
sweet,
you guys
buddy.
fight over who gets which one. Obviously, I'll get your information after this, and I'll get them sent out to you guys. But I think these came out pretty rad.
Well, Mac does majority of the work, so I think I'm gonna let him pick. Pick
those are cool, man. Those are really cool, Brandon. You didn't need to do those, man, but those are amazing.
That's awesome.
Those are awesome, buddy.
Yeah, I don't have to do anything I do, but I do it anyway. You know what I mean?
I love it, buddy. I love it. Really appreciate it.
I wanted to show you guys that I appreciate you, and it's cool to get this stuff out in people's hands. I think when you get these, you'll really see what it is, because as much as I try to do high quality photos and I really try to do good representation of the product, it doesn't. Like, pictures will show flaws your eyes can't catch, and the truth is that when you put them in your hand, it's just a totally different feel than seeing a cool picture online.
I bet.
That's sweet, awesome, man. I'll be marking everything now. Just everything.
I know. I have a full bag of. I have a full valuable pouch of 100 of them, but now I'm just not going to use any of them. So.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
That's
awesome.
Sweet, man. That's sweet. Yeah, that'll just be carrying weight in the bag. But Brandon, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Welcome,
anybody
guys.
Still following us at this point, all of the links to your pages are in the show notes. Your website, everything is in the show notes below. Instagram handle. Shafts and Balls as well. Go check it out. And if you're in your area, go hit some golf balls with you and Chris sometime, because I got to get down there and find you guys, man. I got to get down there and see you guys.
And one thing too is, I will say this: if any of your followers or your listeners in Canada want to order something from me, I will waive any sort of international shipping for them. So just shoot me a message, tell me you heard about me on the podcast. I'll charge you the same rate I would charge anyone locally, and I'll cover full UPS insured shipping to Canada. So I'll take care of you guys.
We'll have to put a reel in. We'll have to put a reel into that, Mac.
That's sweet.
It's put me on a business man now.
Well, Bryce is kind of my Bryce is my middleman. I get all my stuff sent to him, and then I see the Carl's Golfland stuff, and I'm like, man, this would be 5 times as much up here, but then I get it sent to Bryce, and he brings it over when he comes. He smuggles it across. So it's
awesome.
Yeah, but I really appreciate that, Brandon. Best of luck to you, man.
Of course.
What you're doing is awesome. Like, you have so much genuine passion for these things. It's really cool to
very unique.
We're so lucky to get to speak with genuine makers. That's such a cool thing to do. And you're crushing it, man. These things are awesome.
Well, we're all lucky to be able to do this. I mean, I pinch myself every day that I could go into a shop that's mine alone with music, make cool stuff, and have it appreciated. Like, it still blows my mind to this day.
Well, I love it because I love people that care. Because you go to the big OEMs and stuff, they just get as many out as they can. Like the people who do the small batch stuff and do the stuff they care about is really the stuff that looks good and is really genuine. So I know we all appreciate it.
Brandon, we got to have you back. We'll get Chris on maybe next time, and we'll do a 3-peat, man. He's been on, I think, a couple times. You have now too, and we'll have to get an update as you kind of release more and more of these things. That'd be great, man.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it very much.
Is out in my ball in the course, so I tee up. I lose the ball and I re-up. I miss a fairway, I probably end up in the ocean or maybe the beach. And I'm on a par 5 and I'm finna go reach it. Second was blind, I ain't see it. Feel like it might be an albatross. Worst case scenario.